The Chicago Bears have started the season slow in each of Matt Eberflus's first 3 years as head coach. It's been a real problem, and yet somehow they've found ways to turn things around each time.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and of course, the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On the show today, we look at how slowly the Bears have started each season so far under Matt Eberflus. Just kind of how bad it's gotten and what it's taken to turn things around, and try and find some explanations or understandings of why they've started slow now each of these 3 seasons, to get a sense of, okay, is this going to be like an endemic issue that is going to keep popping up every year under Matt Eberflus that we're just going to need to get used to at this point? Or are there reasons to believe that it's something that's getting better each year, and that as they find more stability moving forward, it could cease to be such a significant problem to start each season? And I kind of want to look at then this season, what needs to be better moving forward? How slow can he afford to start this season before things really get a little bit out of hand with the Bears? It's early, so a lot of football still left in front of us here, and I don't want to overreact. But you can't help but feel a certain, it's not quite deja vu, but a familiarity with, Bears come out of the gate, and especially the offense is starting slow. We've seen this season, the Bears defense, it took a half against the Titans to figure some things out, and they had their ups and downs against the Texans, but this defense is playing like certainly a top 10 group, if not a top 5 defense, much like we expected them to. But the offense hasn't even been below average. I mean, it's been bottom of the NFL caliber offense at this point, and that kind of slow start led them to lose to the Texans and barely beat the Tennessee Titans in that Week 1 game. It has not been anywhere close to the start the Chicago Bears were hoping for, offensively at least, through the first 2 games. And we've had that same feeling before each of the first 2 seasons of Matt Eberflus's head coaching tenure with the Chicago Bears. But, each season is its own story and has its own set of circumstances, so it's not like it's been exactly the same problem every time. When I think back to 2022, the Bears, had that surprise win over the San Francisco 49ers in Week 1, but generally started that season 2-4 and couldn't really get anything going offensively nearly consistently enough through those first 6 games. They scored more than 20 points just twice. They had 23 against the Texans, 22 against the Vikings, but games of 19, 10, 12, and then 7 against the Washington Commanders on that first Thursday night football game. With Justin Fields and Luke Getsy that year, they couldn't get the passing game going nearly well enough. They had a couple of big rushing performances, but there were turnovers and it was messy. And, defensively, they gave up 27 points to the Packers. They gave up 29 points to the Vikings. They were having trouble locking things down on that side of the ball. But it was after that mini bye week, after that first Thursday night game against the Commanders, that they came out against the Patriots, got Justin more involved in the running game, opened up the offense, scored 33 points in that one. And we could really feel like they were turning a corner there, at least, how the offense was playing and the team as a whole. Obviously, they didn't win games from that point on. It wasn't about the wins and losses, but the Bears clearly played better after that slower start there. And we're right there that almost beat the Dolphins, almost beat the Lions, almost beat the Falcons. And I mean, we have to rehash the whole season, but slow start. And then they kind of found a way with a bye week, a Thursday night game, extended week, to turn some things around. You go ahead to 2023 then, year 2 under Matt Eberflus, year 2 with Justin Fields, year 2 with Luke Getsy. It didn't feel like there was going to be a lot of reason for them to start slow because everyone had now been here for a year. They weren't just tearing down the team like they did in 2022, but they were trying to build some things up. And yet they come out with a stinker against the Packers, a weird, ugly game against the Buccaneers, and then they're blown out by the Chiefs, and they blow a huge lead against the Denver Broncos. They blew one of the best first halves of any Bears quarterback. Like, disasters in that first 4 games of the season. Then they get a big win against the Commanders and turn some things around. Field gets hurt. Bagent comes in and wins a couple of games as well. And that second half of last season, we saw this Bears team as a whole play so much better, despite starting so disastrously. And so you move ahead then to 2024, where you're 1-1. The sky is not falling, but it feels like the sky is falling on offense. It's not falling on defense. It's not falling on special teams, but it feels disastrous in terms of how bad the offensive line has played, some of the mistakes that Caleb Williams has made. That part feels a little bit less disastrous, but overall the running game being nowhere near what it needs to be, questioning offensive coordinator Shane Waldron and the play calling, a lot of people ready to fire the offensive line coach already. And I do want to preach a little bit of hey, it's been 2 games against a couple of pretty good defensive lines. We should slow down a little bit here, but at the same time, we've seen enough slow starts from this Bears team that we can also step back and say, hey, wait a minute, this is a little bit slower than it should be and feels too familiar to some of the same issues they've had in years past, where weeks 1 through however many, 2 years ago it was 6 weeks, last year it was 4 weeks, maybe this year it's only 2 weeks, maybe we're cutting it by 2 every single time. But for those first games of the season, it feels like an offense that's dysfunctional. It feels like coaches, especially on offense, not putting their players in the best position to be successful and feeling like it's taking them 2, 4, 6 weeks into the season to figure out, oh, this is what that player does well. We should probably do things differently offensively to make sure that we're maximizing that player's strengths. Or, oh, this is what this offensive line is doing poorly. We should change up what we're calling and how we're structuring the offense to minimize some of the weaknesses on this team. And you get this frustration of how long is it going to take you guys to figure out what this team does well and doesn't do well? And now with the Eberflus regime overall, it's how many seasons is it going to take before they stop needing so much time to figure out what works and what doesn't work? You'd like to feel like eventually, as it's Ryan Poles' players, it's Matt Eberflus' players, they've built the roster the way they want to. They're not constantly turning over and changing out everybody like they were early on there. Eventually, you would think it should be able to settle in, know what they are right away, and yeah, they might lose games early in the season. It's not about the wins and losses for me as much as it is the lack of, not preparedness, but just the lack of consistency within that. The feeling wow, the Bears are not being well coached right now. The feeling they're not getting the most out of their talent. Yeah, if you play your best game and still lose, okay, that's a slow start, but it doesn't feel like the team is starting slow. I think teams like the Detroit Lions and Green Bay Packers and people that have lost in week one or early in the season, and they're not really starting slow. They just lost against a good team. That's a little bit of a different story than the Bears, who are 1-1 but feel like they've played 2 bad football games so far. It's more about sort of the way the team looks and feels than their actual win-loss record up to this point. But I think with each of those individual slow starts for Matt Eberflus' Bears teams, you can find reasons why. And I think it's important to kind of parse out whether it's reasonable explanations of oh yeah, that's logical as to why they started slow there, and maybe that kind of explains away that season, or does it sound like excuses of oh geez, we had all these things stacked against us, and so shucks, we couldn't expect us to do better than we did, right? So I want to kind of go back through what turned around then and then put that in the context of right now, this season. What can change the Bears' favors after a slow start so far? Next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at DoorDash, the best way to get all of your favorite foods delivered right to your door, especially during football season. It's the best way to get your favorite game day food, snacks, and drinks on DoorDash without missing a play. I just did this during the Bears-Texans Sunday night game. I ordered some of my favorite Chinese food. I got some peanut butter chicken. It was so good. And I had it delivered right to my door. So I had the game on. Food showed up between the first and the second quarter. I could eat and watch at the same time, and it was a great experience for me because it's quick, it's convenient, it's come right from the comfort of my couch, so I don't have to miss a thing. That's why I love using DoorDash. You can also use it for your groceries as well. If you want to have your cupboards restocked and have all your snacks on hand whenever you need, it doesn't have to come from one of your favorite local restaurants. It can come from your favorite local grocery store as well. Right now, you can save some real money if you use our promo code LOCKEDFALL24. You'll get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. It's a limited time offer. Terms apply. Promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness. Your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Must be 21 or older to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol only available in select markets. Locked On Bears is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. We've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, and right now they've got something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, you still got a few days left. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you can be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just place a $5 bet on anything, whether it's baseball season headed into the playoffs, WNBA, and of course, college football, and your Chicago Bears on the road at the Indianapolis Colts are 1.5-point underdogs. So if you want to take the Bears plus 1.5 to take the upset, just a $5 bet will get you 3 free weeks of Sunday Ticket as well. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. The Chicago Bears' slow starts each season have come for different reasons and have had different ways that they've turned around. And so as much as I want to try and sort of look at this from like a theme standpoint of like, okay, the same feeling has happened 3 years in a row, each has kind of had its own set of circumstances that makes them unique, but I still want to try and find if we can get some common threads here and maybe take those lessons from year 1 and year 2 under Eberflus into now year 3. So like when I think back to, say, 2022, right? Again, a 2-4 start. The offense with Justin Fields had a couple of surprise moments early on, but really took a while to unlock the running game and take things forward there. I think when we think back to 2022, it's easy enough to look at that team and say, okay, it's year 1 under a new head coach, a new offensive staff. They're tearing down this roster and really not putting a ton of talent overall on the field. I think we knew pretty early in 2022 that this was not going to be a good Bears team. We didn't know how bad it would be, but we knew they weren't going to be good. They're taking the field with Byron Pringle and Equanimous St. Brown as 2 of your top receivers with Darnell Mooney in that case. And you knew, they were rotating some different options at right tackle. Riley Reif was starting early in that season. You end up trading Robert Quinn early in that year. So Trevis Gibson and Al-Qadim Muhammad and Dominique Robinson are your top defensive tackles or defensive ends. Angelo Blackson is starting at nose tackle. Then, of course, they trade Roquan Smith halfway through that year. Like, we at least could kind of go into that season saying, yeah, we know things are going to be rough a little bit to start. It was easy enough to explain or excuse a slow start in 2022 based on the circumstances of like, yeah, what all did you expect? But the expectations really were dialed up coming into 2023 because, okay, now you're no longer a first-year head coach. You're no longer a first-year offensive coordinator. It's no longer a first year of everyone learning the defense. You've now been adding pieces instead of taking pieces away. Like they were still, changing out names in between the offseason. DJ Moore comes in. So, okay, you've got a #1 wide receiver for Justin Fields. You drafted an offensive tackle in the top 10. You're adding to the offensive line a little bit there. You drafted a running back, signed a running back, like you've built up the offense. You go out and you sign somebody like Yannick Ngakoue in the preseason and you signed DeMarcus Walker. Like, okay, you've added pieces at the defensive line. You added 2 new linebackers that you really like in Edwards and Edmonds. Like this Bears team felt retooled heading into 2023, and we were expecting them to come out and, we can have hindsight say, did we expect them to beat the Green Bay Packers in week 1? maybe, maybe not, but like we didn't expect them to get smoked by the Buccaneers the way they did, and we didn't expect them to get blown out by the Chiefs the way they did. And then we thought, especially when they were up big on the Broncos, we thought they would win that game, and thought for half of that game they would win that game. Like, it was as disastrous as possible. And so I try and look back and be like, why were things such a slow start in 2023? And I think part of it is you have the Allen Williams situation where your defensive coordinator leaves the team under, we'll call it, mysterious circumstances that a year later, we still haven't really gotten an answer for what happened with Allen Williams. I keep waiting for one of the reporters to dig something up here and find some reason or explanation beyond what we heard at the time, which was family stuff, but it sounded like there's a lot of rumors of a lot more serious stuff going on, and we never got any of that answered for us. I still wonder if years later more of that will come out. But there was a lot of controversy going on around this team. They also lost one of the assistants, I think, on offense. I actually can't remember which position coach it was, but there was another position coach who they ended up letting go of around that same time. So you got all this drama in the locker room. You got the Chase Claypool drama where he's speaking out of turn a little bit, being critical of, I don't remember if it was Fields or the coaching staff at this point. Like, it was messy in the locker room. And then you had a bunch of injuries on the offensive line and on the defense. Kyler Gordon gets hurt early in that season. Eddie Jackson's hurt early in that season. Braxton Jones got hurt after a couple games. Cody Whitehair, I think, got hurt after a few games. Like, you were missing a couple starters in the offensive line and 2 or 3 key starters on defense. And okay, does that explain away an 0-4 start? No. I think it offers some explanation, but it feels a little bit more like excuses. Like, every team deals with injuries early in a season, and not every team starts 0-4. Not every team has the drama of a defensive coordinator leaving under mysterious terms. But, like, that feels like Matt Eberflus's fault, kind of. I mean, not that he literally pushed him out, but Matt Eberflus hired the defensive coordinator who left under mysterious circumstances. Like, it was a Matt Eberflus decision to trust this person in that role, and then the person that he trusted in that role was no longer available to fill that role. Like, that falls back on the head coach somewhere along the line there. So I don't think you can just, like, explain away with valid explanations and not excuses about what happened to a slow start in 2023. But then, for whatever reason, they figured it out against the Washington Commanders. And I don't know if I have a great explanation other than that they had kind of started to figure it out against the Broncos, but then really figured it out against the Commanders. And really, defensively, that's where things locked in. I think they got healthier on the offensive line and the defense as the season went on, and the second half of 2023 was a lot better once Justin Fields came back from the injury from Tyson Bagent, and they could kind of take off from there. So, like, I'm willing to give some of that to health and injuries a little bit, but some of that just feels like the staff not being able to put these players in the best position to be successful. And that's where we come to 2024, right? Where it's like, okay, you've got some of the same 2022 excuses where it's like, well, new quarterback, rookie quarterback, new offensive coaching staff, new play caller, new wide receivers. Everyone's trying to get used to what this offense is going to look like. And the defense is playing well. So can we just chalk it up to saying it takes time? Like, is that a valid enough explanation there? Or is it an excuse to say, hey, we just need more time for these guys to really get to be as good as we think they can be? Because I think there's some validity there, but I also look over at a team like, I don't know, like the Los Angeles Chargers with Jim Harbaugh are 2-0 to start the season, and really, new coaching staff. They're not a rookie quarterback, so by all means, it's not a one-to-one thing there. I mean, the Washington Commanders were a worse team than the Bears, and they're 1-1 with a rookie quarterback and a new head coach there. The Denver Broncos have the same coaching staff, but a rookie quarterback. They're 0-2. I mean, these are not perfect one-to-one comparisons at all. There's not really a perfect one-to-one comparison to say, okay, are the Bears doing worse than they should be? I mean, it feels like it. Certainly offensively, they are. But they also have some legitimate argument to say, yeah, it's a rookie quarterback and it's a new offense. This stuff, it does take time. And they have played a couple of at least really good defensive lines. Maybe the Titans' defense as a whole wasn't great, but their defensive line has some undeniable talent in the middle there. So it feels like, okay, maybe can we be a little bit patient and say Titans were a tough test for a struggling offensive line. Texans were obviously just a tough test all around, and they were in it at the end with the Texans. Can we be patient for a third year? Because it feels like fool me once, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, what are you still doing as the head coach? But like 1-1 is not anything to panic about just yet. 2 games is not anything to write off a whole season yet. But how many more games is it? When do the Bears have to start playing better and not having the slow start before we should be actually worried and actually upset? And I think that time comes sooner than I would normally advocate for. Normally, I'm a very patience and let's give them some benefit of the doubt here. But I think the clock's ticking a little bit faster this year than it has the last couple of seasons. So we'll kind of look at what's in store for the Bears and what they have to do to turn things around here sooner rather than later. Next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is the best way to get tickets for all of your favorite live events, no matter what kind. Whether it's a Bears game or a concert or a stage performance in a theater or a comedy show, whatever you like, you can get tickets for it on Game Time. I have the app on my phone and I use it all the time. I just used it to buy tickets to see Teddy Swims in concert. I'm really looking forward to that show. I'll tell you about it the next time we have a Game Time ad read here. And the nice thing is, with Game Time, I could see the view from the seat in the venue that I was buying. So I knew exactly what I was getting and what I'm going to get when I show up to the concert. And I also knew exactly how much I was going to pay, because Game Time has all-in pricing that you can turn on so you don't get any of those added fees at the end of the checkout process. You get the total right up front. So it's a great opportunity, something you can turn on and makes it a super easy ticket buying process. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. It's go time for the Chicago Bears and Matt Eberflus to overcome this slow start and give us some confidence in the offensive line coach, the offensive coordinator, and the running game and the rookie quarterback. It is go time. And normally, 2 weeks into the season, is the pressure really on, especially at 1-1? No, but I think given where the Bears stand as a team in their team building process and also in their schedule, if they don't start turning things around in the next game or two or maybe three, we are going to have very legitimate, serious, valid concerns about the coaching staff and the talent on this roster right now. Because we can make the excuses for the first two games and say, really good Titans defensive line, rookie quarterback, new offense, slow start, okay. Really good Houston Texans team, still right in that game, okay. Sure, we can write that off and try and push that aside. But if you look at what's ahead next for the Chicago Bears, they absolutely should pick things up and go on a nice stretch here. And if they don't, it's going to be a real problem. If you look at the Bears' schedule from here on out, this coming week on the road at the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts so far are 0-2, lost to the Texans and the Green Bay Packers. Okay, presumably a 1-1 Bears team, you'd like to think can beat an 0-2 Colts team that has a struggling defensive line that should be then a good matchup for the Bears, where the worst run defense in football, and the Bears have been one of the worst run offenses in football, so they should be able to get the running game going against the Colts, which then should open up the play-action passing game and should help Caleb Williams get going, should help the offensive line have an easier day against the Indianapolis Colts. We should see instant progress from the Bears this week. It doesn't mean they need to be a well-oiled machine in midseason form, but we need to see significantly more progress against a team that should be a very good matchup for it. Then you've got the Los Angeles Rams in week 4. Another 0-2 football team. We thought the Rams were going to be better than this, but they're missing both of their dynamic receivers. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are both going to miss some extended period of time. They just put their left guard on injured reserve. They're missing a tight end. They're missing their safety, John Johnson III. The Rams have injuries all over that roster. I still think they're a decent football team, but they are going to be a very banged-up football team still in week 4, and that's not including if they add any other injuries between now and then. They're one of the most injured teams in the NFL. That should make for a more favorable matchup for the Chicago Bears. You should be able to beat a Rams team that has one arm tied behind its back, that's missing. I mean, its top receivers in that game are going to be Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Tutu Atwell, and Jordan Whittington. Maybe you've heard of one of those guys, maybe two. It depends on your fantasy football depth there, but like you should be able to shut down that offense and maybe get a little something going against that Rams defense, especially if you build some confidence with the Colts in week 3. Then week 5, so we go Colts, Rams, and then week 5, Carolina Panthers. Perhaps the worst team in football just benched Bryce Young. You should smoke the Carolina Panthers. And then you get week 6 against the Jacksonville Jaguars in London. It's a Bears home game, but in London nonetheless. Another 0-2 football team. The Bears' next 4 opponents have not won a game yet this season. Now, maybe between now and then, any of those teams could add a win. They're not all going to be winless by that point, but the Jaguars are in disarray. Trevor Lawrence is making mistakes. Their defense is struggling. People are ready to fire Jaguars fans are ready to fire Doug Peterson, or talking about whether they should fire Doug Peterson and how the staff is going. Like, the Bears can win. I mean, these are all games the Bears should be able to win. And I'm left feeling like if this slow start lingers against these teams, what are the Bears going to be able to do against the 2-0 Minnesota Vikings, the Packers when Jordan Love is healthy again down the stretch, the Detroit Lions? I know they've had some rough starts, but like they should be fine against the San Francisco 49ers later on their schedule. Like this stretch of the Bears schedule from here through the next like 10 weeks almost, or at least the next like 5 or 6 weeks, is the easy part. You cannot continue the slow start through the easy part. This is the time where you have everything figured out. This is where you build the confidence, where you show us what this team is capable of and start playing some of your best football so that when you take on the more difficult opponents after the bye week, I mean, you get Cardinals and Patriots, but then it's Packers, Vikings, 49ers, Lions, Vikings, Packers, or whatever the order is in that stretch. Like you get a big stretch of division games and tough opponents. You got to be ready to go then. And right now, week 3 against the Colts is where you start really getting ready. Like if we're gonna write off and excuse week 1 and week 2, which I'm not saying you have to, but people are like, if we're gonna give Matt Eberflus some benefit of the doubt and patience that maybe he deserves, maybe he doesn't. But if we're gonna say, all right, we'll give you a break for week 1 and week 2 because they were good opponents or whatever, and it's early in a rookie quarterback season, a new offense. Like if we're gonna grant them that excuse, week 3. There shouldn't be an excuse. This Colts game is the game you should get right with. It's a get right game. Your offense should get going against a bad Colts defense. Your Bears defense is already playing so well, they should be able to hold down Anthony Richardson and the Colts offense without too much trouble. They did it to CJ Stroud. They can do it to Richardson and the Colts. This week 3 game, it's not a must win in that sense, but like it feels kind of like it is, because if you can't beat the Colts like this, and then if you can't beat the Rams as injured as they are, and heaven forbid, if the Bears somehow lost to the Carolina Panthers and Andy Dalton in week 5, the pitchforks and torches will be outside of Hallis Hall, and there will be a lot of pressure on the Bears to make the first in-season head coaching firing in their entire franchise history. I don't think they will. I don't think that stuff's going to happen. But the point is, like, they've started slow, and they've started slow each of the last few seasons. It's go time now. This is go time for the Chicago Bears. They have to start playing better against these teams, or else there aren't going to be teams that they can play better against, because this is the softer part of the schedule that they need to show themselves and the rest of the NFL what the Caleb Williams, Shane Waldron offense is capable of, with the support of what looks like a top 10, top 5 defense on the other side. We're going to dive even deeper into this Bears-Colts matchup on tomorrow's Crossover Thursday podcast with Jake Arthur from Locked On Colts. So make sure you hit the subscribe button to Locked On Bears on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for your second listen, go check out the new Locked On NFL, now with 2 shows every day. First, you get the madman Tyler Rowland kicking off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then you can stop by the barber shop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk alongside our Locked On local experts covering every team. I co-hosted Tuesday's Locked On NFL with Tyler Rowland. I'll be doing that every single week, so you can check out more of me talking football on Locked On NFL, but twice a day for more of your football coverage. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Then come on back for another episode of Locked On Bears and another opportunity to bear down.